Welcome to the Backstage Leadership Conversations, a podcast series by the digital tourism think tank in collaboration with Abu Dhabi Business Events Week, organized by Abu Dhabi's Culture and Tourism Department. I'm Nick Hall, and in this series, we'll explore the post-pandemic trends in business travel, focusing on key areas such as technology, impact, sustainability, and recovery. Ready to jump into today's episode? Stay tuned to learn more about how Abu Dhabi is helping the MICE sector to thrive. In this episode, we'll dive into how business events impact the wider destination with Geneviève Leclerc, co-founder and CEO of Meet4Impact. Meet4Impact is a non-profit organization. It's a collective and collaborative project that has been designed with the vision of transforming the business events industry by generating movement to create a positive societal impact with its actors across the events sector. They train professionals and support organizations in defining, managing, measuring, and communicating the societal impacts of their activities and events. Geneviève has more than 25 years of global experience in congress management and strategic consultancy for associations and destinations. She works as a content curator, a facilitator, a speaker, and a trainer with the association, meetings, and business tourism industry, and she's specialized in sustainability and societal impact practices. Geneviève is passionate about applying design thinking practices to accompany organizations through innovation. Having been working in the industry for the last 25 years, Geneviève has been able to observe a lot of change. So I wanted to dive with her into some of the challenges that evolution and transition has brought the meetings and events sector, and what she's noticed in particular throughout her career.
I think 25 years ago, we probably weren't really calling it an industry, or maybe I was less aware of the power behind this industry. So I think one of the changes, a change in myself in becoming aware that this was actually a $1 billion industry that was very far reaching, that really cuts across all the other industries. So we call it an industry, but it's actually multi-sectoral. We touch every other sector because everyone is meeting. One of the major change that obviously we're concerned about is the increase in the sustainability conscience of the event organizers and the destination, and more so now holistic sustainability. We started talking about sustainability around events in about 2004, 2005. There were some standards that were developed at that time, and unfortunately, these standards were dropped around 2010 because these standards weren't really talking about the purpose of the industry. It was all about managing waste and managing things and like that. So there was a loss of interest. It didn't become the tidal wave that we thought it was going to be. But now, in the last 5 years, it's really come back in strong force. So in the last 5 years, we've seen a really acute conscience of what we produce and generate as waste and carbon as an industry, but more so how we also create value as an industry. And these terms, legacy, sustainability, regeneration even, have become very prevalent even in the last 2 years.
The word impact is one that has been used extensively over the last few years, and it's something that Geneviève covered during her keynote at the Abu Dhabi Business Events Week in 2022, where she said it's often misunderstood despite its wide use. So I decided to dive a little deeper into this with her.
So impact, if one of the things that I started doing 5 years ago, I left my job, I became a consultant, and I became interested in the social innovation scene, started doing classes and courses around social impact. And that totally changed my outlook and has really influenced the way I work today. But fundamentally, I thought about impact as a short-term thing, but realized that that's actually good for boxing, but not at all good for business strategy. And when we start thinking about the impact of business strategies or policy changes or development strategies. We're really talking about long-term change, sustained change that's going to create benefits at population level or at planet level. So in the short term, we could see short-term effects, we can see outcomes, and these events have a lot of outcomes. But to really claim that there is impact, we need to see sustained change that transforms over time from a mere effect of someone having learned something new, or someone wanting to do something, to actually implementing real behavior change, real new practices in organizations, so that there is an effect that is felt long term. Someone at population level, at community level, feels better, has better conditions, has better status, or the planet gets better. It's really at that level.
Having a clearer understanding of what impact is, I asked Geneviève how the events industry can work towards positively taking concrete action on the Sustainable Development Goals to tackle some of the global challenges we're seeing.
So when we talk about impact, we talk about obviously managing our impact. And that means fundamentally two different and parallel strategies. The first, which we are more used to, is managing our negative impact, otherwise called as our footprint. So how can the events industry reduce its footprint on the planet? It's a fairly resource-heavy industry. It consumes a lot of resource. It generates a lot of waste. Obviously, flying, it generates a lot of carbon. So we really need to get better at understanding how to reduce that negative impact. The SDGs give us a blueprint and give us a common language with government, with our client, the association sector, that really zones in on the different categories of impacts that we should be managing and mitigating. And they're also identifying targets that we should be looking forward to. The other side of managing impact is managing positive impact, and that means deliberately creating added value. So not just mitigating the risk because we're creating damage, but creating positive value that is going to become a shared value for society. And there's a number of sustainable development goals that talk about this value. So education, for example, would be a goal where we'd be looking to create added value. We're looking to create something new for society. So there's a lot of different tactical things that we can do, but the fundamental strategy that unites them all is to say that there should be a deliberate purpose to leverage each one of these events that we're hosting or that we're creating on our turf to create additional values for the set of stakeholders. And sometimes these stakeholders are the event participants. They could be the sector representatives anywhere in the world, someone in that field that would benefit from a development in the field. But they could also be local community. We're having a lot of congresses that generate tangible benefits. I was actually just in a workshop with some stakeholders here in Abu Dhabi, and we had proponents of two different congresses around the table. One of them was from the International Society for Physical Activity and Health, who is having their Congress here in October. And the other ones were for the World Environmental Education Congress in 2024. And both of these events have very specific intentions to create value for the local community. For example, the physical education group, there is little physical activity in the Gulf countries, right? There's infrastructure barriers, there are cultural barriers, there's climate, it's 40 degrees. Who wants to go out and cycle in 40 degrees? So there's some real challenges that they need to overcome to help people achieve a healthier level of physical activity. And what the stakeholders around this Congress are tackling is really how do we change behaviors in the region to make sure that people are achieving better health outcomes. So that's an amazing kind of Congress legacy goal to be saying we're working towards population health outcomes.
As I was talking with Geneviève, I reflected on how fascinating it is to think about the large number of people who are impacted by the event sector, attendees, organisers, and of course destinations attracting events through their vision and their sense of purpose, amongst many others. With this in mind, I asked Geneviève to share a little more on some of the initiatives that have really stood out to her over the years that she's been in the industry. And I wanted to see if this might perhaps serve as a departure point to find new ideas that can help us address sustainability needs through creative approaches and bringing people together to focus on those.
So in general, congresses or events, through their own programming, will deliver value. They'll deliver some kind of benefit. But when we start looking at when a Congress builds a wide range of ecosystem and they start creating parallel activities in the community. So we're having physical activities, we're having global exhibitions where the public can be invited. For example, we work with the AIDS Congress this summer. The AIDS Congress put together a global village, which is a very large art exhibition. It contains people's exhibits, like activists put in their exhibits there. It's got conferences. It has community organization. This is free, open to the general public. Anyone can go in. So even people who don't have access to these congresses can go and interact with participants or activists from around the world, really take actionable takeaways. And what we're hoping through having this in Montreal is to really raise the awareness of local activists and local participants, local patients and their families on how things are done elsewhere, and they get inspired. We're working on a different other event in Flanders, which is an amazing event. It's the International Association for Children in Museums. And these people are working towards better education, more creativity, more inspiration in children by going to museums. And they've connected with the city of Mechelen, who is a city that brands itself as a city for family. And they've decided that what they wanted to do was to make museums more accessible, to increase the content in museums. We've even got kids engaged in creating content for museums. The city has a child mayor. They've got a child council. So we're seeing a number of initiatives to make sure that once this conference leaves, there's a lasting legacy in the city. They've raised the level of museum content. They've got more kids activated through museums. And generally, it becomes a place of learning, a place of inspiration, a place of discovery. So that's a really fascinating event. And there's a lot of initiatives that are going to come out of this event. And it's exciting to be working with people like this because they've got really concrete goals of what they want to do.
To finish things off, as Geneviève was involved in, of course, a large number of sessions and interventions at Abu Dhabi's Business Events Week, I asked her to tell us a little bit more about some of those really brilliant discussions that she'd been involved with. What were some of the ideas that have emerged out of that? And what has she seen that perhaps starts to put into motion some of the ambitions and targets that we've discussed quite a lot as an industry over the last couple of years? How does this give us some insights into the results that we've witnessed at the end of such an incredible event?
Well, I think overall, just reconnecting in the region, it's a strong region. They have a lot of assets for business events. There's also a lot of gaps, right? It's a new country. They're new cities. So they realize that there's a need for expertise. There's a need for external and internal expertise. So I think one of the outcomes of the event in general is to really connect local expertise and international expertise and getting the opportunity of raising the level that they're delivering here. I also think they need to raise their profile. Obviously, we've got Dubai, we've got Abu Dhabi. There are two destinations that are very close by, very different branding. Abu Dhabi is probably perceived more as a place of culture. There's a lot of medical institutions here. So I think getting their brand out and making their distinctive quality stand out is important. Out of the individual sessions I've been involved with, I've seen some direct outcomes because we were doing an impact workshop this afternoon and seeing the people around the room immediately identify things they could implement in their organizations and saying, wow, this is amazing. We've been doing this intuitively, but now we have a framework to do it, was fantastic. And we had the lady that was in charge, the doctor that was in charge of the physical activity event that I was talking about 2 minutes ago. And she was sitting at the table with a representative of a very large conglomerate here who own a number of venues on Yas Island, namely the track of Formula One and all of the venues around them. And they didn't know each other at the beginning of the workshop. And 2 hours later, they had already formed a partnership where the lady from the Yas Island company, Morale, was already proposing to host public physical activity physical activities and championships on her track in her venues during the Congress, and she had pledged support to the doctor. So within 2 hours, I had a new partnership, and there was a whole range of legacy activities being created on the spot right there in that room. That was amazing to see, because they rallied around a common vision. They immediately understood how they could help each other, and that partnership just is now going. And as I walked out of the workshop, they said, you can say that the legacy of your workshop has already started. And that's what we aim for. And that's why we need these face-to-face events.
During my conversation with Geneviève, she made a very convincing case for why face-to-face events are so important and valuable for destinations, and how these bring about a real sense of change for the destinations and the many communities that benefit directly and indirectly from the sector. I was also able to reflect on the massive impact that events have on destinations, something that the MICE sector should really keep in mind to move forward and develop more sustainably looking to the future, considering the role that locals play in the bigger picture, thinking about the Sustainable Development Goals and our vision as destinations to find alignment between all of them. She also pointed us to some very exciting ideas which can definitely help us to reimagine what events might look like in the future and how we can shape them to create and influence the positive impact that we want to achieve. In the next episode, I'll be interviewing Alistair Frost, the future-ready mindset expert, with whom I'll be diving into where technology and disruption come together, and perhaps taking a horizon look at what might come next and how we can be better prepared for it.